Have you ever been made to feel like you didn't belong somewhere you worked hard for? Like your success, your presence, your blackness was somehow an inconvenience to people who thought they owned the space? Literally? That's exactly what happened to the Marshall family when they bought their dream home in a supposedly friendly, suburban neighborhood. But what they didn't know was that some of their new neighbors had a secret, and a fake homeowners association with one mission: to get them out. What happens next? You're about to find out. The sun was just setting over the tree-lined streets of Brookside Estates when Isaiah Marshall pulled his matte black SUV into the driveway of their new two-story colonial. He looked over at his wife, Simone, and their two daughters in the back seat, all smiles and laughter, and thought, "We finally made it." It had taken nearly 10 years of hard work, sacrifice, and climbing up the ranks in his engineering firm to get here. Simone, a public health researcher, had just wrapped a huge project with the CDC. Between their incomes, credit, and sheer determination, they had beaten every statistic thrown at them. No one could take this away. Or so they thought. Brookside Estates was one of those classic Americana neighborhoods: perfectly trimmed lawns, oversized mailboxes, white fences, and just enough diversity to be on the brochure. But from the moment the Marshalls moved in, there were whispers. It started with small things: cold stares from the man across the street, the way the mail was suddenly late, or the subtle microaggressions at the neighborhood welcome picnic. A woman named Cheryl, with bleached blonde hair and a red, white, and blue scarf tied around her neck like it was July 4th every day, had introduced herself as the president of the HOA. "We have certain standards here," she'd said with a tight smile, handing Simone a thick pamphlet of rules. But when Simone looked into the HOA with the realtor, there hadn't been any mention of one. Still, they brushed it off. Maybe it was informal. But then came the first letter. Typed in bold print and dropped in their mailbox, the letter stated, "You are in violation of Brookside Estates HOA codes. Your front door is painted a non-approved color. You must comply or face a $500 fine." Simone squinted at the letter. Their front door was black, elegant, modern, and the same color it had been when the previous owners lived there. And those owners? A white couple. Not once had they received complaints. Isaiah called Cheryl. "Oh yes," she chirped. "We're enforcing things more strictly now that new families are coming in. Can't let the neighborhood slip." That "new families" line made Isaiah's jaw tighten. More notices followed. Their trash bins were visible from the curb for too long. Their daughter's birthday banner had been a visual disturbance. A basketball hoop in the driveway was deemed urban clutter. Then came the biggest shock. The Marshalls received a certified letter warning that due to repeated violations, the HOA would begin eviction proceedings. Isaiah couldn't believe it. "They're a fake HOA," he growled, tossing the letter onto the table. "This isn't even legal." He contacted the county clerk's office. Just like he suspected, Brookside Estates had no officially registered HOA. Cheryl and her group were operating illegally. But when Isaiah confronted her in front of neighbors, Cheryl smirked. "Oh, sweetie," she said, condescendingly patting his shoulder, "you're new here. You don't understand how we do things." That night, a neighbor reported seeing Isaiah and Cheryl arguing aggressively, and suddenly 2 squad cars rolled up to the Marshall's house. Isaiah stepped outside with his hands up before they even rang the bell. "We got a call about a disturbance," one officer said. "Said you threatened someone?" "I didn't threaten anyone," Isaiah responded calmly. "Check your facts." The officer looked unconvinced. But before things escalated, a real estate attorney neighbor, Mr. Sanchez, who had overheard the entire situation, came out and vouched for Isaiah. "There's no HOA," he told the police. "They're bluffing and creating a hostile environment." The officers left, but Cheryl's smirk across the street was unnerving. "This isn't over," she mouthed. Isaiah and Simone began documenting everything. Every letter, every encounter, even installing cameras around the house. What they uncovered shocked them. Several neighbors were receiving the same harassment, but they were all people of color. An Indian family on Elm Street had moved out mysteriously just 3 months after moving in. A Latina single mother had been voted off the street by an anonymous petition claiming she was renting illegally. None of these had any legal backing. It was a coordinated campaign of racial intimidation masquerading as neighborhood standards. Simone had had enough. She took the evidence to a local civil rights attorney, who immediately agreed to take the case pro bono. "This is textbook housing discrimination," the lawyer said. "We're going to expose them." But just as things started to turn, someone spray-painted, "Go back where you came from" on the marshal's garage door. Their security camera caught a masked figure, but the face was hidden. Police filed a report, but no arrests were made. Darius, their teenage son who had come home from college for the weekend, stood staring at the garage with fists clenched. "I swear if they think they can scare us out of here." "Darius," Isaiah interrupted, "we fight smart. Not scared and not reckless." That week the family received a summons. Cheryl and her group, calling themselves the Brookside Preservation Council, had filed a civil claim to enforce HOA authority, and were demanding a court-ordered removal of the marshals. Their lawyer was a smug man named R. Claiborne Skip Hollingsworth, who claimed the marshals had violated the covenant of neighborhood conduct. At the pretrial hearing, Skip smirked at Simone. "This isn't about race, Mrs. Marshall. It's about rules. If your family can't adapt, perhaps a different community would suit you better." The courtroom fell silent. Simone stood and spoke with the grace and poise of a woman who had endured enough. "This neighborhood didn't come with your rules. And it certainly doesn't belong to you." Just then their attorney, Ms. Reddick, opened her folder and dropped a bombshell. "We have obtained official property records, video evidence, and 911 call transcripts that show a pattern of racial harassment and illegal impersonation of a homeowners association. And we're filing a countersuit for housing discrimination, emotional damages, and attempted fraud." Skip's face paled. Cheryl, who sat behind him, began whispering frantically. But just before the judge could respond, the court officer entered with a folded note and handed it to the bailiff. The judge read it aloud. "Due to new evidence submitted to the county recorder's office this morning, the case is being suspended for 72 hours for further review." Everyone in the courtroom turned to look at Isaiah. He didn't say a word. But that night, back at home as the marshals gathered around the table, Isaiah opened his laptop and clicked a file titled, "Brookside HOA, Secret Documents." Darius leaned over his father's shoulder and asked, "Where did you get that?" Isaiah looked up, eyes serious. A whistleblower just came forward. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories that uplift Black voices and expose hidden truths. They said the marshals didn't belong. They sent threats, fake citations, even tried to use the law to bully them out. But what they didn't count on was that Isaiah Marshall wasn't just an engineer. He was a man who knew how to fight back, methodically, legally, and with precision. As Part 1 ended, Isaiah had received a mysterious digital folder titled Brookside HOA, Secret Documents. Now we find the family huddled in their dining room as the truth unravels, and it's worse than anyone expected. The file opened with a login screen and a single note. "Password is your address." Isaiah typed it in. Inside the folder were dozens of PDFs, audio recordings, and even internal emails between Cheryl and over a dozen neighborhood leaders. They weren't just gossiping about lawn decor or trash bins. They were running a covert network of surveillance, targeting Black and brown residents in Brookside Estates. One email read, "The marshals have cameras now. Let's keep things subtle. If we can't push them out financially, we'll use code enforcement tips." Another, even more disturbing, said, "Too many outsiders moving in. If we don't preserve Brookside, it won't be Brookside anymore." Simone gasped. "They're treating this like a war strategy." Isaiah scrolled through images, screenshots of their own social media pages, notes about Darius's college, and even clips from their security footage. "They've been spying on us," Isaiah whispered. "This is criminal." Darius was fuming. "Dad, this is enough. We can't just go to court. We need to bring this to the media. People need to know." Isaiah nodded. "We will. But we need everything lined up. No loopholes. We win with facts, not fury." Their lawyer, Ms. Reddick, arrived the next morning and spent hours reviewing the documents. "This isn't just harassment," she said grimly. "This is conspiracy. Impersonating an HOA is fraud, but coordinating it across multiple residents? That's organized discrimination." Meanwhile, the fake HOA wasn't backing down. Cheryl and her team filed a neighborhood vote to formally censure the marshals for civil disobedience and noncompliance. It was laughable but dangerous. Some neighbors were intimidated into going along. "They're afraid of Cheryl," Simone told their attorney. She's been manipulating people with fear and fake authority for years. Then came a break. One of Cheryl's closest allies, Mr. DuPont, an older white man who had lived in Brookside since the 80s, quietly asked to meet with Isaiah. They met at a diner 3 towns over. Mr. DuPont looked nervous, constantly glancing around. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I didn't know how far it would go. When Cheryl asked me to sign off on the petition, I thought it was just about enforcing standards. But when I saw her laughing after your garage was vandalized, I knew it was deeper than that." He slid a flash drive across the table. "I copied this from her laptop. She doesn't know." The drive contained voice memos, private recordings Cheryl had made during board meetings at her house. In one she said, "They think this is their neighborhood now? I don't care how many degrees or jobs they have. Brookside was built a certain way for a certain kind of people." Another recording had her instructing someone named Karen to call the county anonymously and report them for a zoning violation, even if you have to make it up. With this new evidence, Ms. Reddick updated the counter-lawsuit to include criminal impersonation, civil conspiracy, and racially motivated harassment. The media had not yet been contacted, but she had a plan. "We leaked this the night before the trial. We control the story. If we go too early, they'll play victim." Simone, however, had her own idea. She reached out to her friend Alyssa, a popular black investigative journalist with a huge social media following. Alyssa agreed to quietly look into the situation. A few days later, she messaged Simone. "You're not going to believe this. Cheryl was never a licensed HOA officer. In fact, she was sued in her previous neighborhood for the exact same tactics, and settled out of court." Back at the Marshalls' home, the family was under even more pressure. Their mailbox was destroyed with a bat. Darius's car had 2 tires slashed. Police came but said there was not enough evidence to prove it wasn't random. Tensions hit a peak when little Ava, their youngest daughter, came home from school crying because a classmate told her, "My mommy says you're gonna get kicked out because your daddy's a troublemaker." Isaiah and Simone sat their children down that night. "Listen," Simone said gently, "what we're doing is hard. But it's right. And it's for all the families who came before us and were forced to leave. We're not leaving." The day before the court hearing, Alyssa published her exposé, "The Suburban Lie: How a Fake HOA Tried to Evict a Black Family." The article exploded online. News vans began appearing outside Brookside Estates. Reporters knocked on Cheryl's door. She refused to speak, but a local news camera caught her screaming, "Get off my property," while waving a garden rake. Suddenly, neighbors who had remained silent began speaking up. The Indian family that had quietly moved out? They came forward with their own story of harassment. A mixed-race couple who had remained low-key for fear of retaliation now offered sworn testimony. Even a postal worker revealed that Cheryl and 2 others had requested mail be rerouted from suspicious homes. The morning of the hearing, the courthouse was packed. Isaiah wore a dark navy suit and a calm expression, but inside, his heart pounded. He wasn't just fighting for his family anymore, he was fighting for a message: "You will not run us out." As the hearing began, Skip Hollingsworth again tried to argue that the Preservation Council was a voluntary civic group with advisory power. But the judge interrupted. "I've reviewed the evidence, including emails and audio recordings that clearly indicate malicious intent, impersonation, and racial targeting. I'm inclined to dismiss their claim entirely and proceed with the counter-lawsuit." Skip stood frozen. Cheryl, sitting in the front row, looked like she had swallowed glass. But just then her phone buzzed. She looked at it and turned pale. Ms. Reddick smirked. "Problem, Cheryl?" But Cheryl didn't answer. Instead, she stood up slowly and whispered something to Skip. Then Skip turned to the judge and made a shocking statement. "Your Honor, we would like to submit new documentation regarding the Marshal's loan history and financial status." Gasps erupted in the courtroom. Simone's eyes widened. Darius clenched his fists. "What did you just say?" Isaiah asked, standing. "We have reason to believe," Skip said with a wicked grin, "that Mr. Marshall's home loan was acquired under misleading pretenses. If that's true, it may invalidate his ownership entirely." Everyone stared at Isaiah. He slowly turned to Simone. But she already knew. Something from their past had come back, and someone had dug deep. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories that uplift Black voices and expose hidden truths. When the courtroom fell silent, Isaiah Marshall stood frozen, his face unreadable. Just moments ago they had the upper hand. The judge was on their side. The evidence was mounting. The fake HOA's lies had unraveled before the world. But then came a curveball that no one, not even Ms. Reddick, saw coming. Cheryl and her team of suburban vigilantes had somehow obtained information about Isaiah's home loan. And now they were claiming fraud, seeking to invalidate the very foundation of the Marshalls' right to be in Brookside Estates. "We have documentation," Skip Hollingsworth said, waving a yellow envelope with smug satisfaction. "That shows discrepancies in the Marshalls' mortgage application, including inconsistencies in stated income, making their homeownership void under county ordinance." Simone shot Isaiah a look. "What's he talking about?" she whispered, her voice tight. Isaiah's jaw clenched, but his voice remained calm. "I'll handle it." The judge raised an eyebrow. "This is highly unusual. Ms. Reddick, are you aware of these allegations?" Ms. Reddick stepped forward, composed but clearly blindsided. "Your Honor, I believe this is an act of desperation. And it's irrelevant to the matter at hand. If there were truly an issue with the Marshalls' mortgage, that would be between them and their lender, not a matter for a civil hearing involving a fictitious HOA." The judge nodded slowly but turned to Skip. "Do you have admissible evidence?" "We have a whistleblower from the Marshalls lending agency," Skip replied. "And if the court permits, we'd like to call them to testify." There was a rustle in the courtroom as a woman in a gray blazer entered, clutching a folder. She took the stand and identified herself as Claire Henley, a former junior underwriter at Bright Star Lending. "I was instructed to expedite the Marshalls file," she said. "I remember it because it had been flagged for needing additional verification. But my supervisor pushed it through." Isaiah's heart dropped. Not because of guilt, he had submitted everything truthfully, but because now they were trying to twist bureaucracy into a weapon. "Did you speak to the Marshalls directly?" Ms. Reddick asked during cross-examination. "No," Claire admitted. "I just reviewed the file." "So, you can't say definitively whether their documents were inaccurate?" "No, I can't." "And have you been employed by Bright Star since then?" "No. I was terminated 3 weeks ago." "So you're here voluntarily. And who contacted you about this case?" Claire hesitated. "Mr. Hollingsworth's office." The judge leaned forward. "This line of inquiry is tenuous. Unless there's direct proof of fraudulent intent by the Marshalls, I will not allow this to derail the core issue." Cheryl stood up, red-faced. "Your Honor, this neighborhood has rules. It's not about race, it's about integrity. People like them come in and ruin. Down, the judge snapped. "One more outburst and you will be held in contempt." Darius looked ready to explode. Simone gripped his hand tightly. The courtroom took a recess and the Marshalls huddled outside with Ms. Reddick. "This is a tactic," she said. "They're trying to intimidate you, cast doubt, get a delay, maybe even spark a foreclosure investigation. But we won't let them win." "I told the truth on every document," Isaiah said, his voice low. "There's nothing they can find that's real." Simone was still shaken. "But how did they get access to our private loan file?" "They hacked someone or bribed someone," Darius muttered. "This is war." But things were about to escalate even further. That night, someone broke into the Marshalls' backyard and slashed the tires on both Simone's and Darius's cars. Security footage showed a figure in a hoodie, but the face was hidden. The next morning they found another letter in their mailbox. This one wasn't typed. It was handwritten, "You can't win. Leave before it's too late." The police opened an investigation, but no one was arrested. Meanwhile, the Marshalls' story continued trending on social media. Civil rights organizations began calling. One even offered to file a federal suit if the state court dismissed their claims. Alyssa, the journalist, released a follow-up report titled, "White Rage in the Suburbs: Inside the Manufactured Power of Fake HOAs." Cheryl refused to speak to the press but did appear on a local conservative radio show where she claimed she was the victim of a woke mob trying to silence community values. Her appearance backfired. Public support for the Marshalls surged. Still, stress took its toll. Isaiah barely slept. Simone's blood pressure spiked. Ava cried herself to sleep. And Darius, he started skipping classes. "I can't focus," he told his parents. "How can I sit in lectures while y'all are fighting a war at home?" But then came an unexpected twist. Mr. DuPont, The same elderly neighbor who had once handed Isaiah a flash drive, called again. "Meet me tonight," he said. "I have something big." They met in the same diner, this time with Mr. DuPont visibly shaken. "I made a copy of Cheryl's personal folder from her desktop. She's not just targeting you, she's collecting data on multiple black families across the county. Not just here in Brookside." Isaiah stared at the files. Pictures of homes, license plates, even screenshots from closed Facebook groups. Cheryl and her group weren't just a fake HOA, they were part of a network. "It's bigger than Brookside," Isaiah murmured. "This is a hate group hiding behind real estate." Ms. Reddick reviewed the files and immediately filed a motion to escalate the case, requesting a state-level hate crimes investigation. But the court date arrived first. As the hearing resumed, the judge looked serious. "I have received a new motion from the Marshal's Council," he said, "requesting escalation based on evidence of coordinated racial harassment. I am inclined to proceed with this request. But before I do, I have one question for the plaintiffs." He turned to Cheryl. "Are you now or have you ever been involved in any group, online or otherwise, that monitors and targets families based on race or ethnicity?" Cheryl hesitated. "No. So, if presented with emails, photographs, or recordings to the contrary, you would be surprised?" "Objection," Skip shouted. "This is a fishing expedition." "Overruled," the judge said. "You've opened this door." Cheryl looked visibly shaken. Then, bam, the courtroom doors burst open. Everyone turned. A tall black man in a dark suit strode in, followed by two uniformed federal agents. He handed the bailiff a folder and walked straight to the judge. "Your Honor," he said calmly, "my name is Special Agent Langston of the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division. Based on submitted evidence, we are opening a formal investigation into discriminatory housing practices and hate crimes linked to the Brookside Estates Preservation Council." Cheryl gasped. Skip's jaw hit the floor. "And Isaiah?" He just closed his eyes and smiled. "Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories that uplift black voices and expose hidden truths." The courtroom had never felt more electric. Cameras flashed. Reporters jostled at the doors. Cheryl's face was pale, her lips trembling. Isaiah watched with quiet strength as Special Agent Langston handed the judge a sealed folder. "This contains digital and audio evidence submitted by multiple witnesses, including a whistleblower who confirms that the Preservation Council is part of a broader organized effort targeting black and minority homeowners across several counties," Langston said firmly. The judge accepted the folder, his expression unreadable. "We will pause civil proceedings until the criminal investigation determines the extent of this operation," he declared. "But make no mistake, if even half of what I've heard today is true, Ms. Cheryl Withers and her associates may be looking at federal charges." Cheryl's mouth fell open. She glanced around as if searching for support. But Skip Hollingsworth suddenly leaned away from her, as though her guilt was contagious. "I didn't know it went that far," he whispered, but everyone heard it. That whisper made headlines. The marshals walked out of the courtroom surrounded by supporters. A crowd had formed outside, holding signs that read "Brookside belongs to all," and "Justice for the Marshals." Darius, holding Ava's hand, raised his fist in the air. Reporters flooded them with questions, but Isaiah only said, "We want peace. We want justice. And we're not going anywhere." That night, the Marshals' home was flooded with light from candles. Neighbors, black, Latino, Asian, and even a few white families who had remained silent, came to show support. One woman wept as she hugged Simone. "I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. We were afraid. But your courage gave us ours." It was a beautiful moment. But behind the celebration, the threat hadn't gone away. A week later, federal agents raided Cheryl's home. Computers, hard drives, and boxes of documents were seized. Agent Langston informed the marshals privately, "What we're seeing here is part of a coordinated system of exclusion. They've been operating for years under the guise of neighborhood preservation, but it's really racial gatekeeping." However, the fight wasn't over. Cheryl, out on bail, filed a motion claiming the marshals were slandering her and weaponizing the government against honest citizens. She hired a high-profile defense attorney known for controversial cases. "This is cancel culture run wild," the lawyer claimed on national TV. "My client is the real victim here." Despite the backlash, the marshals stood strong. Ms. Reddick expanded the civil suit to include defamation, emotional distress, property damage, and harassment. But then something chilling happened. One night, while reviewing documents in the dining room, Isaiah noticed the power flicker. Then the front camera went offline. A minute later, a rock shattered their living room window. Darius sprinted outside, but the street was empty. Only a single note was left taped to the door. "Your win is temporary. We'll be back." The police arrived quickly, but there were no fingerprints. "They're desperate," Simone said, trying to stay calm as Ava cried in her lap. "They know they're losing." The next morning, Cheryl's lawyer released a statement. "We intend to prove that the marshals obtained their home through deceit and used federal leverage to oppress law-abiding citizens." The court granted one final hearing, this time in a federal courtroom. And the stakes couldn't be higher. Not only would it determine damages and accountability, but it would determine whether the marshals would keep their home. "They're going for the nuclear option," Ms. Reddick warned. "They're going to argue that your mortgage was never valid, based on fraudulent evidence." Isaiah looked her in the eye. "Let them try." Days before the hearing, Darius received a cryptic message on Instagram from an anonymous account. "Check your dad's application packet." Page 9. Curious and cautious, Darius pulled the old documents from storage. Page 9 was a scan verification letter, but something was off. The signature line showed a name, Brian Kettner. But Darius had heard that name before. He did some digging, contacted an online records site, and cross-referenced the signature. Brian Kettner had died 4 months before the loan was submitted. Darius's heart pounded. "Dad," he said, bursting into Isaiah's office. "I think someone doctored your loan packet." Isaiah grabbed the page. His eyes scanned it. He paled. This isn't my original letter. This isn't what I submitted." "Cheryl?" Simone asked. "Did she do this? Or someone connected to her?" Isaiah said grimly. "They forged a document to make our mortgage look fraudulent." They rushed to Ms. Reddick, who was already preparing court exhibits. She examined the page. "This is tampering," she said. "And it's a setup. If we hadn't caught this, they could have used it to push a foreclosure through federal housing authorities." They quickly requested a forensic audit. The results confirmed their fear. The document in question had been digitally altered from the outside after loan approval. "This was planted," Langston said after reviewing the report. "Somebody accessed your file after the fact. We'll issue a subpoena for Brightstar's internal access logs." Brightstar, now in damage control mode, handed over the logs. That's when they found the smoking gun. The unauthorized access had come from a third-party consultant, hired by Cheryl Withers's real estate lawyer. The digital trail was undeniable. The hearing began in federal court. Cheryl showed up in a white dress suit, flanked by lawyers and PR handlers. She smiled for the cameras, waving like a pageant queen. But inside the courtroom, her confidence crumbled. Agent Langston testified first, presenting evidence of systematic targeting of families based on race, and detailing the forged loan documents. Ms. Reddick followed, laying out the chain of harassment: surveillance, fake fines, vandalism, social engineering, and online manipulation. Then Isaiah took the stand. "We came to Brookside to build a life," he said. "To raise our children. We worked hard, we paid our dues, and we followed the law. But from day one, Cheryl Withers and her group decided we didn't belong. Not because of anything we did, but because of who we are." Then Cheryl was called to testify. Her lawyer objected, but the judge overruled. On the stand, she was pressed about the forged document. "I had no knowledge of that," she said. "It must have been a mistake from the firm." "So you admit your lawyer's firm was involved?" "I didn't say that. But you did instruct him to dig up anything on the marshals, correct?" Cheryl went quiet. "I don't recall. Let me refresh your memory." Ms. Reddick played an audio clip, Cheryl's voice. "I don't care what you find, just make them look dirty. They don't belong in Brookside." The courtroom gasped. The judge banged his gavel. Cheryl turned beet red. The judge dismissed for the day but warned, "We will return tomorrow for closing arguments. And I advise counsel to prepare for a ruling that may involve criminal referrals." As the marshals walked out, Isaiah held Simone's hand tightly. Darius was beside them, chin up. But just before they reached the door, a man in a gray coat stepped in front of them. He handed Isaiah a business card. "We need to talk," he said. I'm from the Office of the Inspector General. We've just uncovered something bigger. Cheryl's connections go beyond Brookside. What you exposed may be just the tip of a national conspiracy. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories that uplift Black voices and expose hidden truths. The courtroom was buzzing the next morning. Word had spread like wildfire. National media outlets had picked up the story. Civil rights organizations, housing justice advocates, and even members of Congress were tweeting support for the marshals. Outside the courthouse, dozens gathered with signs, HOA equals hate organized again, protect Black homeowners, and the marshals belong here. But inside it was deadly serious. As the judge entered and the courtroom rose, Isaiah and Simone held hands tightly. Their children sat just behind them. Ms. Reddick stood tall beside Isaiah, her presence unshakable. Across the aisle, Cheryl looked exhausted. Her lawyer, clearly overwhelmed, rifled through a stack of notes. The judge wasted no time. We are here for closing arguments in the case of Marshall versus Withers et al. I remind everyone this is a federal hearing concerning civil rights violations, harassment, and attempted fraud. Ms. Reddick stood first. Her voice was calm but firm. Your Honor, this case was never just about HOA violations. It was about a family targeted because of their skin color. A mother whose children were harassed. A father whose mortgage was tampered with. A neighborhood where bigotry dressed itself in bureaucracy. Cheryl Withers and her group invented authority, forged documents, weaponized lies, and tried to destroy this family. But the marshals never wavered. And now they stand not just for themselves, but for every family who's ever been told, "You don't belong here." The courtroom was still. Then Cheryl's lawyer stood, fumbling. Your Honor, this has gone too far. My client has been portrayed as a villain for enforcing community standards. She never intended harm. She simply wanted to maintain order. By faking citations? The judge asked. Planting evidence? Forging documents? The lawyer's face flushed. We admit mistakes were made. No, the judge interrupted, voice rising. Crimes were committed. Cheryl blinked. Her composure cracked. Tears filled her eyes. But the judge was unmoved. He turned to Cheryl. Stand, please. She did. Slowly. I find that you, Cheryl Withers, knowingly led a false organization masquerading as a legitimate homeowners association to harass, intimidate, and attempt to evict the Marshall family based on discriminatory motives. I further find that you colluded in the manipulation of mortgage documents, encouraged tampering with legal files, and conspired to incite racial division in this community. This court refers your case for federal prosecution on multiple counts, including fraud, forgery, conspiracy to violate civil rights, and hate crimes. Cheryl collapsed into her chair as gasps echoed around the room. But the judge wasn't finished. I award the marshals $2.5 million in damages, plus full protection of property rights and restoration of their legal standing. Furthermore, I order the immediate dissolution of the so-called Brookside Estates Preservation Council and permanent injunctions against its members ever holding positions in neighborhood governance again. The gavel struck. Judgment was rendered. Reporters raced out. Cameras flashed. Isaiah exhaled, finally. He looked to Simone, who whispered, "We're free." Darius stood and shouted, "Let's go." The crowd outside erupted in cheers as the marshals exited the building. Journalists flooded them with questions. But Isaiah simply said, "We fought back. And we won. This victory isn't just ours, it's for every family who's ever been told they're not good enough. We are enough. And we belong." A week later, Cheryl was arrested by federal agents after the U.S. Attorney's Office officially indicted her and two others from her Preservation Council. The DOJ investigation found that the group had targeted at least 9 Black and Latino families in surrounding counties with similar tactics. Some had lost their homes. Others had quietly moved out. But now, thanks to the marshals, the truth was out. Their case set a precedent. Several states moved to increase oversight of HOAs and impose criminal penalties for racially motivated harassment. Meanwhile, the marshals received a call from the Office of the Inspector General. Agent Miller confirmed what Langston hinted at. Cheryl's network was linked to a broader scheme involving real estate preservation groups that monitored minority home purchases in affluent areas. Cheryl's emails revealed communication with a shady firm called Equizone Consulting, which offered community analysis services. Translation: a racism for hire network. Isaiah was stunned. They were running a campaign against black success, he said. And getting paid for it. The marshals handed over everything they had, helping the DOJ and FBI build a national case. But amidst it all, they returned home, to their home. Neighbors came out with flowers, cards, baked goods. Some had stayed silent during the worst, but now stepped forward to apologize. "We were scared," one white neighbor admitted. "But you showed us what real strength looks like." Darius started mentoring at the local youth center. Ava wrote an essay for school titled, "My Family is Stronger Than Bullies." And Simone joined a housing justice nonprofit to help other families fight back. As for Isaiah, he started writing. His first book, Brick by Brick, Fighting for Home, became a bestseller. The marshals weren't just survivors. They became symbols. Their story was featured on national news, in documentaries, and taught in classrooms as a modern civil rights lesson. But one moment stood out above the rest. One morning, a knock came at the door. A young black couple stood there nervous. "We just bought the house down the street," they said. "We wanted to say thank you. You made it safe for us to move here." Isaiah smiled, then invited them in. "Welcome to Brookside," he said. "You're home now." Sometimes evil doesn't wear hoods or wave torches. It hides behind paperwork, committees, and polite language. But racism, no matter how it dresses itself, can't stand against truth, unity, and resilience. The marshals showed that when one family stands tall, it gives others the courage to rise. The fight for justice doesn't end when the gavel drops. It continues every time someone dares to say, "I belong." The end. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories that uplift black voices and expose hidden truths.